And is there anything right now that BP is not doing that you would like to see them be doing?
We'd like them to get better at claims. And there are two issues with claims. One is just the timeliness for the individuals. Now, they made some things fairly easy. If you show up and you have a W-2 form or any kind of evidence of employment, they're starting to make partial claim and payments. We need to get that routinized so every month they can look forward to that check coming in. And we have somebody on my staff that's actually meeting with BP today. There's a second larger issue that the local leaders identified to the president in the last couple of weeks, and actually Governor Riley in Alabama indicated to me on Saturday, and that's businesses putting claims in for their inability to operate seafood manufacturing plants and so forth. Those claims are processed in a different way and require different documentation that requires information about the business themselves. That appears that may be a little cumbersome right now, so we're actually going to have a meeting with British Petroleum this week and try and simplify their ability to actually handle the claims from businesses. So in that regard, they don't have a history of that company of doing that type of work. They brought in contractors and claims adjusters that are working with them, but we think they need to do that better and quicker.
And I would say this, we heard this as the Admiral said on Friday, both with elected officials and when we met with fishermen, we met with seafood processors who are going through this process. We've set up, as we talked about on Friday, if you go to disasterassistance.gov, there's a pretty large icon for people to go to if they are having difficulty getting their claims adjudicated by BP. There's an official that is set up through FEMA that works directly with the National Incident Commander to ensure that this process is moving along as expeditiously as it needs to. We've got problems with, as the Admiral said, major claims being paid and different things along the route. A seafood processor said, you know, when we catch our shrimp, we freeze the shrimp and they're processed. So while their processor may not be seeing a lessening in the output based on what they had caught previous to this, obviously because a huge portion of the Gulf is closed to commercial fishing, more shrimp is not coming in, right? So that back end of that process is ending, while if you just simply looked at the business, the sheer output would not necessarily look different. So those are things that we're asking BP to work through, and it's something that the president.
I think the best example, the president and I were down there, we met with local leaders and had some lunch with them, is a marine operator. Having maybe 10% of the boats tied up at the marina than they would normally this time of year, and all the associated support for that, you know, food and local businesses being used for meals and all that kind of stuff. That is very, very complex, but we got to get to the bottom of this and make sure these folks can have access to the claims process.
Anybody who's in the economic food chain of the Gulf essentially eligible for reimbursement if you operate a B&B that doesn't have people coming, if you supply food to the B&B that doesn't have people coming, I mean, is it all the way down?
You're asking some questions that we never had to answer in the context of an oil spill or one this large, and those are the types of things we're working through this week. Tracy Waring from FEMA we've actually brought her over here with us on the National Incident Command staff, and she's coordinated that for us. We'll have some more. We're delving into that this week.
You said that when the second platform arrives, that they'll be able to contain about 20,000 barrels of oil?
Produce about 20,000 barrels, yeah.
So does that mean that when you look at the two models, that you're expecting that it's going to be closer to the 25,000 barrels of oil?
We just know that's their capacity. We still haven't established what the flow rate is. That is the big unknown that we're trying to hone in and get the exact numbers on.
But that flow rate could end up being higher than 25,000.
If that's the case, then we're going to be dealing with the residual oil until we get the larger production platform that I talked about earlier.
25 was before the shear, right? Which, 25 was before the shear, which could have increased it another 20%.
Could have, yes.
Could have.
The flow rate group is, as I understand it, going through the larger flow rate as well as trying to hone in on what we think we might have seen in terms of increased capacity after the shear cut.
And we'll make those numbers known as we get them. We're not trying to lowball or highball. It is what it is, and we need to tell you that.
But at the most, you'll be able to produce 20,000 barrels of oil per day once the second platform.
Correct, and then that's anticipated to be replaced by a larger production capacity platform in several weeks.
And then how often do you speak to Tony Hayward?
As often as I need to, either Tony Hayward or Bob Dudley. Sometimes they're in different places, different locations, but I would say daily and maybe multiple times during the day if I need to.
And have you brought up the claims issues
Yes.
with either of them directly?
Yes, I did.
And what has been their response?
They're saying they're looking for any type of input direction that we will give them because they obviously want to do this right. It's not a core competency of BP, so we need to give them some help and some direction and guidance, and that's what we're doing.
And the meeting that you're having this week, will that be with Tony Hayward?
No, it'll be with the person that runs our claims processing for BP. And if I need to meet with Tony Hayward after that, we'll do it. It'll be myself, Tracy Waring, and their claims processor.
When you speak to Tony Hayward or Mr. Dudley, do you trust the information that they're giving you?
I get this question all the time. I'm not sure it's a matter of trust. You know, we're working together. It has to be cooperative. We're trying to create unity of effort. If I ask them for information, I get it. If I think I need more information, I go back and ask them. If there's an ambiguity or something needs to be clarified, I go back and I do that. I've given them direction sometimes saying we're not going to go forward until you give me this. It's an ongoing, constant dialogue. You can call it partnering, cooperation, trust, whatever, but that's the way it works.
And we're asking for, and we'll be asking for at this meeting, some greater transparency on this claims process, trying to shorten the window for what BP is legally required to do in filling those claims, but in having a broader understanding through transparency about what has yet to be fulfilled.
There are some complicating factors. We are dealing with personally identifiable information. So there are privacy issues and data associated with the folks who are filing claims and how you actually manage this process. We just to make sure we get it right.
Major?
3 issues, Admiral. 1, dispersants. Can you catch the nation up on what we've used so far? Are you still using them? What's the environmental feel you have for them now as this continues? Secondly, on the sand berms in Louisiana, where are they? Is one halfway constructed? Do you have 2 up, or where are we in that process? And are they being contemplated anywhere else along the possible spill target areas as the spill continues? And lastly, you said on one of the shows yesterday that you would look into this issue whether or not BP withheld or ordered you to withhold video early on in the disaster from public release. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think we issued a statement on that. I don't think there was any indication that we did do that. And my press assistant can make it available to you. If you go back, I forgot the first question now.
Dispersants and the sand
Dispersants, good. Dispersants, as you know, we recently breached the 1 million gallon threshold, not a threshold of any particular importance other than its sheer magnitude.
Never before had that.
Never before. I've had frequent contact with Lisa Jackson on this, and the overall approach is to minimize the amount of dispersants being used on the surface because they're not as effective as the dispersants used in the subsea area. And the reason they're not as effective is they go on top of the oil, and you get less effect because there's oil. If the oil is several inches deep, the dispersants kind of react on the top, and you actually need to kind of mix it up and emulsify it for the dispersants to have the greatest effect. When we apply dispersants with a wand at the point of discharge, there's a better mixing already, so we're much more effective at a much lower rate. So our general strategy is to use subsea dispersants wherever possible and minimize the amount on the surface to what's needed for safety or exigent circumstances. And I'll give you one. If you saw, we did some video out on the oil rigs last week when I was out there. In the background, one of the offshore supply vessels was actually spraying water all around the Discoverer Enterprise. That was to put down volatile organic compounds that were coming up out of the oil that was sitting around the ship that was actually producing. There actually is a threat to personal safety and health there on those vapors. Dispersants put those down. You'd rather use water to do it. There may be times where, because of the situation, you may want to use dispersants to reduce those vapors. But those are the types of things we would talk about. They give us a dispersant plan, and EPA is aware of that. Our federal on-scene coordinator is trying to minimize dispersants on the surface, but there may be times that they're going to use it, but we need to use those in very judicious quantities. That means we're going to be relying on in situ burning and mechanical skimming in and around the wellhead.